How worried should we be about the Chiefs offense? That's a question I thought about when writing the power rankings over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. The game of the week on Monday night lived up to the hype, lived up to the expectations. The Eagles were able to come back in the second half and win the Super Bowl rematch, get a little bit of revenge. I'm sure they would have rather won the game in February, but they get a little bit of revenge here and are able to win. The story of the game coming out of this is certainly the Eagles getting a big win, a win they needed given the schedule they have coming up. They have a lot of tough tests left, but this is a massive win for them. I think the most impressive part of it is they were able to clamp down on defense in the second half, and we'll get to that Chiefs offense here in a second. But they were able to move the football and find ways to score points without A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was absolutely blanketed in this game, as has the Kansas City defense has done a lot this year. They were able to blank the number one receiver, but Jalen Hurts was able to create some with his legs. DeAndre Swift was able to create some on the ground, and Hurts hit Devontae Smith for a long pass that set up the ultimately game-winning touchdown. So it was a great game from this offense, not from a numbers perspective, but from the perspective that they had kind of been riding A.J. Brown over the last few games, and they were able to get it done with him completely being taken out. And I think that's a good sign for what's to come for them. As for the Chiefs, they didn't score any points in the second half. They actually have not scored a second half point since their game against the Chargers way back in week 7. They have struggled on offense really all season, and especially since that blowout of the Bears. They blew out the Bears, and ever since then, the offense hasn't been able to get going. I mean, the wide receiver room is not good enough. I think that is pretty clear at this point. Even if we don't think about the dropped touchdown, likely touchdown for Marquise Valdes-Scantling, that would have probably given the Chiefs the lead, and might have been the game-winning touchdown. Even if we don't think about that, you look at what these receivers are able to do, and they're not getting open consistently enough, and they're not doing enough for Patrick Mahomes. That puts a lot of pressure on him. That puts a lot of pressure on Travis Kelce. And this offense, just isn't working. And all of that happened despite them actually being able to run the football against this Eagles defense, which is not something a lot of teams have been able to do. So they were able to run the football. They were in a position to win, and they just couldn't get it done. Now, they have Patrick Mahomes, they have Travis Kelce, they have Andy Reid. There's a lot of institutional faith that they're going to figure this out. They also have a really good defense, and I think that's something they haven't had in the past that makes you feel a lot better about where we might be moving forward. But this offense, it is time to ring the alarm bells. This isn't like, they're just kind of easing through the season. There are real issues in this offense, and they need to get those figured out before we get into the playoffs. The other big game of the week, unfortunately, was not as fun, was not as exciting, and that was the Ravens beating the Bengals on Thursday night. Unfortunately, we lost two really good, really important players to their teams to what looked like season-ending injuries. Mark Andrews was the first to go down. The Ravens are holding out hope that he might come back this season. At least that's what they're saying publicly. We'll see what happens with Mark Andrews. And then later on we lost Joe Burrow, who is definitely out for the season, and it looks like a bit of a death knell for the Bengals season. Jake Browning will come in and start. I'm leaving open the scant possibility that maybe he's Kurt Warner. Maybe he's going to come in and really surprise us. But the most likely outcome here is that this is the end of the Bengals season, and we're going to look at them missing out on a season that is squarely in their championship window with Joe Burrow. I mean, the rest of their schedule isn't great. Their defense has been bad recently. They've given up the most yards per play over the last 5 weeks. So there are a lot of things working against this team and working against them, making the playoffs and really trying to make a run. As for the Ravens, losing Mark Andrews is an issue. It's a concern, especially because the trio of wide receivers that we read a lot about in the offseason. A lot of ink was spilled on Zay Flowers and Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman. And outside of Zay Flowers, they haven't really showed up. Odell Beckham did end up with 116 yards in this game, so that's good. He also left the game early with an injury, but it kind of looks like that's minor. One of those guys needs to step up here with Mark Andrews out for this offense to really reach its potential. This Ravens team is good. They have Lamar Jackson. He did limp a little bit through this game, so hopefully Lamar Jackson's going to stay healthy. And as long as Lamar Jackson's healthy, this offense is going to be pretty good. But the real ceiling for this offense and the real ceiling for this team is now going to rely on one of these wide receivers stepping up, and we'll just kind of have to, see what happens there. We got a lot coming up this week. Obviously, Thanksgiving, 3 games on Thanksgiving, a big Thanksgiving night game between the 49ers and the Seahawks team that, needs a win now that they lost against the Rams this week. So a lot to look forward to for next week. Getting ready for that, head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com, read my power rankings for this week,